Hello and welcome back. Part 3 of my SimToolkitPro series. The part that I already have done, but with no microphone. I'm now checking that my microphone has not stopped working again. I have some issues with it from time to time. So today we're going to look at how I'm going to set up a new flight plan. Now, because I've just done it, basically I need to kind of reset what I've done. So I'm going to show you the steps, but we are going to, instead of using the Fly Now button, which would not show up now, I'm going to show you how I generated it, and then we're just updating it, basically. So normally what you do is, if you want to set up something completely new, you could start entering, let's say, the flight number here, the call sign. But before you can start creating flight plans, you need to actually set up at least one aircraft. So you go to your profile and you go to fleet, and you have to make sure that you have at least one of these entries. So what I did in the previous part is I added a custom aircraft. I'm not going to go through with this. I just show you what I would enter. I would pick the Boeing 738. Right, the airline code would be Deutsche Lufthansa, right? And the registration, you just pick some registration thing, and you decide what sim this is for. In my case, it's the X-plane. And then you press OK, and then it would set up this thing, right? So you need to have at least one of these boxes in order to do the flight planning that I'm showing you next. So the flight planning, don't show again, yeah. Okay. So the flight planning, what I'm doing now is I'm going to try and say generate a new flight. So when you press this button, you get this here. So you would say I'm leaving from Munich and we're going to want to plan a flight to Berlin-Tegel. Berlin-Tegel, that's the airport that was supposed to be not existing since 8 years or so, because there was supposed to be this other great airport coming, which is now 9 years late, and is supposed to come this October. This October. We shall see. I really wonder if we are going to see Berlin-Brandenburg this October. Maybe they finally manage. You have to select an aircraft, and that's where this came from. You see B738. And then you pick the Lufthansa one that I just showed you how to create. This is the flight number, and the ATC call sign, that's the one that you would use for VATSIM, would be DLH 199er. Departure time, yeah, whatever. Also the date. It puts something like, it usually puts about 30 minutes. So it puts you 30 minutes ahead. Now, that would be all you need. If you press the generate plan now, it would actually go to SimBrief, and you need a SimBrief account, okay? A window will open. If you haven't logged on to SimBrief yet, it will actually get your SimBrief credentials, and then it would run this in the background. But before I do this, I quickly show you the advanced part. Now, you could, if you want, but you don't have to, start entering all kinds of things. You could, for example, define what runways you want to use instead of having it no pref, which means SimBrief decides, depending on the weather. You could have performance. You could do a cruise profile, okay? You could define a cruise altitude, or you leave it automatic. Fuel. You could have contingency fuel, taxi fuel, so you could enter some values here. And there's a fuel factor, so you could plus or minus 1, 2, 3, 5, I think it's %. So if you know that SimBrief notoriously undercalculates or overcalculates your fuel by experience, then you could say, reduce it a bit or increase it a bit so that we are closer to the real fuel use when we do the SimBrief stuff. The same for the weights. You could actually give it the exact weights that you want it to be. And some stuff for the output format. We use the Lido, the Lufthansa format, and units in kilograms. And yes, we want sits and stars as well. Okay, but you don't have to do all that. You can go back to the simple and just say generate plan. And what happens is this window opens. If you're logged on already, that's what you will see. If not, then you will first have to log on. and it creates the flight plan for you. And I have to say, this looks now a bit odd. This was supposed to be the same flight that we already had, and something doesn't look as nice as before. I have no idea. Let's do update flight and go back to the flight planning. So this is weird. Yeah, I think it didn't do too well with. There's something. What is this? Is this the? So we have the star, the Milgu, okay, to rogue up, and then we have the transition, but that doesn't really, yeah. So something went wrong here. This is not right. This looked completely different before. We didn't have all this stuff here. I'm not sure what that is. Pity. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to copy this. I'm doing clear flight plan. I'm going to paste this in here and then say load pasted flight plan, and then I let it. Okay, it does the same thing. Okay. Yeah, that's what happens when microphones act up and you have to do everything again, because first time round it was perfect. Second time round it's yeah. So that's the approach. Why do we have, what's this arrival thingy here? Why is this the approach? This is the star. This is the runway 36 approach, but I can't do anything here, but I can edit this here. This is this 26 right. Aha. So then I can select the ILS, rogue up, and then I can select a star, which was the, I forgot actually, I think it was Milgu, right? So it's Milgu 1 Romeo, all right, and the transition, why don't we use that one? That's actually, so why are you not putting it in? No transition. Oh, is this no transition? Oh, this is no transition. Oh yeah, indeed it is. Let's try this one. But this one is not very good, yeah. Let's do no transition. Or, yeah. It's not getting better, does it? Yeah. Yeah. Where is this no transition? Let's use no transition. So, because that is clean and nice, we say ILS. Yeah, definitely we need the approach. Okay, and we leave it like this, because somehow this is not quite right. So I'm doing update flight, and now I have again all these things here. So it shows me the operational flight plan that SimBrief has created. It gives me all the information about the airport, all the load stuff that we need, the cruise profile, and also the flight level. This now has changed to flight level 300. Okay, so flight level 300 would be our altitude, and here's all the weights that it has calculated. Here's all the frequencies in Munich, the current weather in Munich, the terminal area forecast for Munich. And the same thing then for Berlin, the META, the TAF, and all the information that you require. For example, the landing altitude that you can then dial in the Boeing, the length of the runway, and slope, and yeah, elevation, and so on and so forth. Very nice. And you can go on the charts map, scratch pad waypoints. Here's a list of all the waypoints. Should you use some old aircraft with the SIVA INS, this is the positions that you may want to enter. What I'm not sure is though if this is the correct format, but I think it may be the format that you use in order to program your SIVA. Right, so there you go. If you go to the live map now, it shows you the flight, and as it looks, yeah, when I look out the window, that's pretty much what I see as well. So there are clouds, there's rain. So the first part of the flight will probably not be as nice until we reach something above the cloud. And we are going to be flying over cloudy and rainy weather for quite some time. But Berlin itself there's not much. So the weather in Berlin is by far a bit better than, yeah. By the way, on the route you see also constraints. So for example, here we have a constraint between 110 and 140 flight level. Here's a speed constraint, max 250 knots. And there are some more. Here's 220 knots, 170 knots at ROGAP. So it actually shows you all the constraints that are associated, for example, with the arrival procedure and the approach. Yeah, very, very good and quite impressive the way this is done. And you can see how easy it is to actually do flight planning. Okay, so let's go back in here. What other options do you have? Basically, if you get this string from some other planning tool, okay, you can paste it here and then you just say load pasted flight plan, and it will base your whole flight planning on this string instead of going to SimBrief. Or you've done your sim briefing outside your SimToolkitPro, you didn't use this feature. What you can do is get me the latest SimBrief operational flight plan, which happens to be the same, obviously, because we've generated it on SimBrief. And what you can also do is, if you have PFPX, which is a not so cheap software that does kind of flight planning on almost airline level thing, so dispatch level thing, you can create a briefing package, as it's called, if you have a flight. And this briefing package you can store on the file system. And if you do have that on the file system, you could actually load it, and then it would load the flight plan from the PFPX briefing package. And you normally, because of the situation now, you would have the Fly Now button and the New button. So the Fly Now button, you need to press the Fly Now button, because until you have pressed Fly Now, or in this case Update, this flight plan is not used by SimToolkit for all the other things. So in order to activate your flight plan, you need to press the Fly Now button, or in this case I press on the Update button. Okay, and then the flight is active. What you can do is, by the way, you can go and pre-fill it with VATSIM, for example. Then you come to the usual VATSIM page, right? You could also do an EVEO pre-fill. This is very similar. You will be brought here to this file flight plan page of EVEO, and you definitely need to have a valid EVEO account. And the same is this new PostCon. I don't know much about it, but it's a new network. And then the Pilot Edge pre-file. Pilot Edge is a payware ATC service on the west coast of the US. So should you actually fly Pilot Edge, here you have a way of easily getting your flight plan also filed with Pilot Edge. And if you want to save this for any of your aircraft in prepared or in X-Plane, there you go. Here it is. Yeah, you just press on any of the buttons, and then you get, in this case, it remembers that it's the FMS plans folder, but that's the only one I saved so far. If you want to use any of the other ones, you press, and then you can see it doesn't know about the paths, so it brings you to the download folder, and it would save it there, and then you have to move it to wherever that particular aircraft would want it to be. All right. These buttons down here, I have a feeling that these may be live updates of when you're in the simulator and you're running the Rotate MD80 or the Flight Factor A320. It could be that you can directly pump this into the aircraft, possibly, because there is a Flight Factor A320 file save. So I could think that possibly this is a direct connection to your aircraft, but I'm guessing here. I haven't tried that yet. Okay, so that's all about creating a new flight plan and using it in SimToolkitPro. As you can see, a fantastic tool which gets better and better with every release that he's doing. Until next time.